few minutes. There's an old parable of the rabbi who reached the end of his life. He was sitting at home on his deathbed, and his students came to visit him every Shabbos. And he was frail and he was ill, and his Talmidim asked him to reflect on his career in the hopes of gaining some sweet wisdom for themselves. He said that when he left the walls of the seminary, he was eager to fix the world. And with all the confidence that comes from graduating at the top of his class, he set forth on that agenda. Yet after a few years, he felt that he couldn't quite get the power to fight for justice and turn the world on its head. So he turned his eyes downward and thought perhaps he could redress the problems of the city in which he lived. A few years hence, now mid-career, he sat and he thought and he said, well, I just don't have the power to change this city. There's too much crime. There are too many poor. What could he do? So he turned his eyes downward again and felt that maybe he could affect his family. And towards the end of his tenure, he cast his eyes downward again and realized that he really needed to do more than anything else was to change himself. So on his deathbed, when he was asked at the end of his life to reflect on his career and his accomplishments, this old rabbi said, I wish I could do it all over again, just in reverse order. And so this holiday season, I don't want to begin with the threat of Iran, nor with ISIS, nor with our melting planet, nor with the global embarrassment of millions of Syrian refugees. I don't want to focus this year on our political malaise in America or the corrosion that this discourse has on our families, nor will I speak of the number of homeless sleeping unsheltered or the number of children who go to bed hungry tonight, as those too are terrible embarrassments. I will begin with what is asked at this time of year for each of us to do, by asking to think about ourselves, what kind of person we are, and in this place with these walls, these lights, these flowers, and most importantly, these people. All of us together at the dawning of this new year. And most critically, I want to begin with myself and peer through the looking glass of my own life and reflect on our lives today as Jews. This is the beginning of my 8th year at Valley Beth Shalom. When I moved here, I was not yet a father. I wasn't even 30 years old, and I was newly a husband. In fact, as soon as I found out that I was going to come to Los Angeles, I picked up the phone and called a car dealership to buy a car over the phone from New York City, because the first thing everyone needs when they get to LA is a car. We arrived in a small apartment. Our stuff took weeks to get here. My parents, in all of their graciousness, had purchased and shipped us a mattress. And so for the first 6 weeks at VBS, we lived in a small apartment. I had a small car. We slept on a mattress, and my sister-in-law gave us one of those cubicle refrigerators they have in the dorm rooms because the refrigerator hadn't arrived yet either. Now, after 7 full years of marriage, my life has blossomed and my family has blossomed. Sarah and I celebrated the birth of our 4th child, Naomi, earlier this year. You can clap. Go ahead and clap. We have a beautiful home and a wonderful community of friends. Not bad for 7 years of work. It took Jacob, our father, 14 years to get what he wanted. I did it in half that time. Eat your heart out, Jacob. I've completed 7 cycles around the sun living in this community. 7 Rosh Hashanahs, 7 Yom Kippurs, and 7 Sukkots, 7 Hanukkahs, 7 Passovers. In our religion, 7 is the number that signifies spiritual movement, change, and renewal. Sarah and I decided many, many years ago, when we first got married, that we would take this number very seriously, and that every 7 years we would reevaluate our spiritual lives. Not to evaluate how much money we had, or how big our house was, or even how many kids we had, not to evaluate where we were living, not to evaluate where we wanted to go on vacation, but a real checkup with each other about what we cared about, what we believed in, and what we hold dear. In a word, what we cared about and what we felt was sacred. And so when you hear me speak of the number 7 again, which I'll leave by the wayside for now, but when you hear me speak of the number 7 again, you at least know it's time to wake up your neighbor or call home and tell your wife or husband or kids to put the kugel in the oven, because I'll be coming to the end of my sermon. But it's fitting, I think, after 7 full years here at VBS, I take seriously the notion of our spiritual challenge and renewal. By reflecting with you today on our ancient and precious religion and its search for the sacred. Over 200 years ago, Napoleon swung open the gates of the Jewish ghettos and welcomed us finally to rejoin the march of history as a free people with rights and privileges denied to us for centuries. His outward tolerance and fairness towards Jews, however, wasn't based on his own largesse or his generosity, but based on his grand plan to have us disappear entirely by the means of total assimilation, intermarriage, and conversion. In fact, in November of 1806, Napoleon wrote to his brother, and he said, "It is necessary to reduce, if not destroy, the tendency of the Jewish people to practice a very great number of activities that are harmful to civilization. It is necessary to change the Jews. Once part of their youth will take place in our armies and in our businesses, they will cease to have Jewish interests and sentiments. Their interests and sentiments will be entirely French." Napoleon's goal was to have us disappear by cleverly setting before us an unrelenting question, one that he would hope would erode our sense of otherness, a question like the tide of the mighty ocean that pounds against us every day and against the breakers of our own ritual observance and laps consistently against the shores of our culture. A question that seeks through its ebbs and its flows to slowly dissolve our separateness like salt into the sea. From the moment that we were freed to walk the world and no longer feel like we were outcasts, to no longer feel that we were rotten or detestable, that moment when we began the long and winding path to acculturation, to assimilation and secularization, from that very moment, Napoleon's genius was that he set before us this ineradicable question. Now that you are free, with fading opposition and fading oppression and increased inclusion in a wider society, and at the end of the day, when you have nothing to fear or feel separate from the world, what of your spiritual life is truly sacred? What is sacred? What is sacred enough for you, O Jew, to keep practicing, given that every form of philosophy, entertainment, and business opportunity will one day be open to you? What is sacred enough for you, O Jew, to hold on to now that our young men and women will no longer stigmatize you? They will fall in love with you, and they will ask to marry you. What is sacred to you, O Jew, that even when you are accepted, you will still be despised, hunted, and murdered, not for your beliefs, but for who you are? What is sacred enough, O Jew, to you once you learn enough science and technology to question religion altogether, where a transcendent God loses meaning? What is sacred to you, O Jew, once that the fear is gone and the pressure to be like everyone else is so overwhelming? What is indeed still sacred to you? Napoleon's talent as a conqueror proved to be both of body and mind. He created the framework from which this single question, in all of its forms and permutations, has reminded us and remained our central preoccupation for over 200 years. It is this question that has been on our collective Jewish mind for centuries. It was the preoccupation of Spinoza, of Schechter, of Mendelssohn, of Geiger. It was the central question for Kaplan and Heschel. It was the single question that Rabbi Shulwai spent his entire career trying to answer. What in this messy world, with its vast an open sky, unlimited access, what in this open world is still sacred to us? Of course, it's not only Jews who have faced this very question. Faith in all its forms have seen radical shifts and diminishments in all religions. I don't need to quote you the studies. We don't need to hear more numbers. I'd like to quote a poem from one of my favorite poets, Matthew Arnold, a British poet from the 19th century. His poem is entitled Dover Beach. He says, "The sea of faith was once too at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdled fertile. But now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world." Arnold wasn't speaking about Jewish faith. He was a practicing, if not believing, Christian. The sea of faith is drying up because the idea of the sacred has been eroded by the spiritual climate change wrought by modernity. It is worth reading Arnold's last stanza to show what he believes is left when the idea of the sacred has swept over the horizon. He says, "Ah, love, let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused armies of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night." They say that Arnold was one of the first moderns. He saw the flow of faith, the shining sun of the holy, set beneath the waves. And we are left on this darkling plain together, without certainty, without direction, swept up by confusion, while forces more powerful than us clash unendingly. It is a darkling plain, a dark chaos, a tohu vavohu, void, vast, and indeed dark. And one only need to flick our thumbs on our smartphones through our Facebook feeds to see it. There's a frenetic energy teetering our world from one side to the other. Sometimes it's kind of funny, actually. Like the other day when I saw a photo of friends at the Studio City farmers market. The kids were playing with piglets and chickens. And then we flicked again to see another friend at a fancy breakfast joint taking a selfie with his bacon and eggs breakfast. If only those little pigs and those chickens knew what was in the window next to them. But sometimes it's not funny. It's utterly tragic and bitter. When we flick the thumb and we see beautiful 3-year-old children holding a beautiful sign saying, "My first day of preschool," with happy and bewildered faces, as my own children and the children of our community did this past couple of weeks. And then we flick our thumbs again, just one flick later, and we see the photo of Ayalan Kurdi, the Syrian 3-year-old boy, lying lifeless by the sea, which took his life while trying to escape the war in his own country. Flick happy, flick sad, flick flowers in a garden, flick melting ice caps, flick a kid's first baseball game, flick a kid shot by a stray bullet in a gang war, flick virtue, flick vice, flick goodness, flick evil, flick light, flick dark, flick, 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 flick. It is by definition what the philosopher Nietzsche called madness. This is the moment we find ourselves in now more than any other in this generation in the history of the Jewish people. We've reveled in our freedom. We've achieved amazing success. And yet, in this madness, why have I heard from so many people saying that their life feels too dizzy, too out of control? Why do I speak to so many who live in beautiful homes and have successful careers but feel so empty and just so bored with life? When the modern world regulates the sacred only to rooms called sanctuaries, rooms without windows where the naive go to sing songs of a long-dead God. Where are we left? Except on Arnold's darkling plain, where the best in life that we can hope for is to look good, to feel good, and have lots and lots of goods. I think it's time to answer this 200-year-old question a bit differently. Given our freedom in this country, when we are asked with all of our choices available to us, with all of our access at every moment to everything that we can do, that we want to do, what in our lives is truly sacred? Where do we find holiness today? And how can we make room for it in our busy lives? And I always look to our Torah where I find the answers to all of our questions. When God created the world, God lived in this same chaos, in the darkling plain of tohu vavohu that I feel today. Yet out of the darkness and out of the vastness and the void, God made a decision. God decided to say, Yehi or, let there be light. The darkness was not enough for God. The vapid back and forth, the lack of purpose and the lack of meaning, not enough for God. And it shouldn't be enough for us either. Just as God said against the void of nothingness, Yehi or, let there be light, so can we. And if we are willing to create a sacred life, it is up to us to make that decision just like it was up to God. Let there be light. Judaism is called a Western religion, but its most basic and fundamental notions are not Western. The word sanctuary is foreign to the ear of the rabbi. This is what Napoleon's Western mind could never fathom. The word sanctuary has no cognate in Hebrew. We use the word bayit, home. It is the place where we live. It is our bayit. It is our home. It is not a sanctuary walled off from the world. It is a bayit where we meet friends and family, where we welcome home those who have been sent away, where we find precious moments together. In this room is called a Beit Knesset, not just a house, but a house of ingathering, where friends and families can come together to recovenant their lives together, to see babies born, to see people married, to see beautiful birthdays, to see retirements, to see people pass away. This is where we can see our children grow strong and we see the aged grow weak. The rabbis teach that it is forbidden for a shul, for a Beit Knesset, not to have a window. The light of the world must come in. We must be a part of it. Because in the Jewish mind, as opposed to the Western mind, the sacred and the profane are overlapping categories. They commingle at every moment. The opposite of belief is not disbelief, but indifference to each other and to the world. Because all of us at every moment are both sacred and profane. And out of this darkness that we have the opportunity to see the pain of the world and its madness and make the decision like God did and to say, let there be light. Rabbi Chanoch, the Hasidic sage, it is asked by his disciple, but don't we believe in two worlds, the one and the other world? And do not the nations of the world also believe in two worlds, this world below and the one above? Then what really is the difference between us? Rabbi Chanoch answered, there is a difference. They believe that the two worlds are separate, severed, one below and one above. But we believe that the two worlds are one. And to find the sacred, to answer this question, we need to mold the two worlds into one and say, Yehi or, let there be light. You, me, each one of us has the power of Bereshit, of creation. It is said in the Midrash that the world was created specifically for the opening moment when the light came pouring into the world. The world was created for the sake of the beginning, for the sake of human beginnings, ever anew. Making something sacred begins within the depths of your own heart, not to some other place walled off in the Western mind, but in your own heart, where choosing deciding and meeting can take place. At the moment when you hold in your deepest regrets, in the moment where you feel your deepest failings, in the moment when you feel the darkness surround you, when you feel lost and when you feel overcome, when you can be good and when you want to be good and you want to find the sacred, you have to choose to say, "Let there be light," Yehi Or. And from your lips, you can say blessings on all occasions. It is because we want to make sacred every moment that stands before us. We become more connected to our food by motzi. We become more connected to the world around us through the Kedusha. We become more connected to the passage of time by reciting Kiddush. And we become connected to those loved ones who are with us and who are no longer with us through the words of Kaddish. At every moment, we can be both sacred and profane. But it is up to us to create that moment. We shouldn't let an important moment pass. A child's first step, a graduation, a first job, a marriage, a final divorce settlement, a promotion, a retirement, a sickness, a recovery. Any moment worth remembering, we can call to mind what is sacred within us and muster those forces and give air to those divine embers that glow within us and say, "Let there be light," Yehi Or. In a world with no boundaries, in a world of ultimate choice, in a world that tells us that absolutely nothing is sacred, we each have the power of Breshit, of beginning anew. And with you as a Jew and as a human being, you can uncover what has been lost and create a sacred life that fills you up and gives you purpose, pushes you into the world and not out of the world, and makes your life complete, as complete life should be, with both prose and poetry, with both madness and order, with both darkness and light, and with mourning and dancing. But you have to choose to use your power to say Yehi Or, let there be light. God chose to create the world out of darkness and chaos and meaninglessness. It was a choice, a decision, something powerful and proactive. And in a world today, we should make the same choice. But God didn't do it all at once. It took God 7 separate steps. 7, as I said, is the holiest number in our tradition because it symbolizes the idea of creation and renewal. There are 7 Noahide laws that our tradition teaches us that govern over all of humanity and not just the Jews. So universal ethics is created through the number 7. Our matriarchs and patriarchs are holy ancestors that first laid out the path of Judaism for us. You put them together, they number 7. Several Jewish holidays are 7 days long. And in the Torah, the land of Israel was laid fallow on the Shemitah year, 1 year in every 7. The menorah that lit up the temple courtyard and indeed the world had 7 branches. To become anointed as a priest, to become a holy one in the community, took 7 days. There are 7 blessings of creation and joy between a bride and a groom. The bride makes 7 circuits around the groom under the wedding chuppah to create a sacred space for themselves of love and protection and holiness. And the people of Israel marched with shofar in hand 7 times around the impenetrable city of Jericho, and those walls came tumbling down. The number 7 can create and it can destroy, it can lift up and it can lay low. It is our most sacred number. And I want to ask you, as I've completed 7 cycles this year and engaging in a process with Sarah to discover what we believe is truly sacred, to join me in that process. I ask you to use this number 7 to think about the power of creation you have, to find what is truly sacred in your life. The tradition teaches that the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are the most consequential days of your entire year as a Jew. They matter the most. I want you to discuss 7 sacred questions with a friend or a family, or even write it down in a journal sometime between today and Yom Kippur. These 7 questions can give you direction, take your relationships to a new level, and reveal our deepest selves to each other. They are a guide to self-creation to creatio ex nihilo, to making something out of nothing, creating a sacred world for you and your family and your community. I'm going to give them out to you now. We have some people who are going to come around and hand them out because I believe that if I just tell them to you, you'll probably forget them by this afternoon. They're also on my page on the website. And so as they quietly walk around, go ahead and take one, but I'll read them off to you here from the Bima. I'm asking you to carve out an hour to turn off your phones and use these 7 questions as a guide. And then if you're up for it, I'd love for you to email me your reflections, your thoughts, sometime between now and Yom Kippur. I really do want to know what you're thinking. And of course, one last thing, as with all of these moments, try to take a moment to truly listen to each other, to make eye contact, and not to judge anyone for what they're sharing. Here are the 7 questions. Number 1, gratitude. A third of all prayers in Judaism fall under the category of gratitude. They ask for nothing, including the Modim prayer, which we say 3 times a day, saying, Nisecha shebechol yom imanu. We thank God for all the little everyday miracles that make life possible. I want you to share with others what in life you are most grateful for. Tell a story about it if you can, and try to include it, why that makes you so grateful. So the first question is gratitude. The second one is purpose. In Moses' last speech to the people, he sets out on a path between life and death, blessings and curses. And he implores us, Uvacharta b'chayim, to choose the path of life. The goal of the Torah is to set this path before you and give you meaning and purpose. So, I ask you, what moments in your life have given you the most meaning? When have you felt that this life is what it's supposed to be about? When have you felt that you are living in accordance to your own purpose? The second question is about purpose. The third, regret. The Kol Nidrei prayers create a moment of deep reflection and meditation with the intention of letting go of the past regrets in order to seize our futures. It says, Miyom Kippur she'avar ad Yom Kippur haba aleinu l'tova. From last year's Day of Atonement until this year's, which has come upon us for goodness. So I ask you, what in your life is your greatest regret? Try to tell a story, if you can, of why this incident or issue became your greatest regret. So the third one is regret. 4, prayer. Prayer is a way of addressing our deepest concerns in the most poetic manner. If we don't expect answers, that's okay. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't ask, even for ourselves, finding ourselves saying moments of prayer. When in your life have you ever truly prayed? Truly prayed. And what did you pray for? Tell it as a story if you can. Number 4 is prayer. Number 5 is learning. Rabbi Akiva was once asked, what is most important, learning Torah or doing mitzvahs? He responded, learning Torah is more important because it can lead you to doing mitzvahs. Our tradition is one that expects a lot of us, I know, but it expects one thing more than anything else, and that is that we have to always keep learning and keep growing. So what is one question that you have about Judaism, but we're always afraid to ask? And who can you go to find the answer to that question? So the 5th question is learning. 6, transformation. Personal transformation is at the heart of our sacred experiences. Sarah was transformed when she found out she was going to have Isaac as a child. Moses was transformed when he saw God at the burning bush. So when in your life have you ever felt personal transformation? What part of your life today is even open to personal transformation? And what do you think keeps you from experiencing that transformation? The 6th question is about transformation. And number 7, the last question, is about justice. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Justice, justice shall you pursue. It is the widest margin we can draw for the pursuit of justice in our lives. When Moses said the word tirdof, he wasn't speaking only to those Israelites standing on the mountains. He was speaking to everyone because justice needs to be pursued even if we can't always achieve it. The moral arc of the universe never stops bending one generation to the next. And so where in your life have you felt that you've participated in making the world better? How do you want to leave this world better than you found it? The last question is about social responsibility. It is about our traditions, understanding, and call to justice. 7 questions: gratitude, purpose, regret, prayer, learning, transformation, and justice, each meant to point towards what is truly sacred in your life. I want you to have this conversation as a family or as a group of friends, or even write it down in a journal. Call your friends, call your kids who are off at college and ask to Skype with you for just an hour and have this question. Ask these questions. Where can you find the sacred in your life? And if you're up for it, I would really love to hear your thoughts. You can email me at the synagogue and farkas@vbs.org, or contact me in some other way. I look forward to hearing from you. These 7 questions can help you seize your own power of creation. And to answer this primary question of modernity, what is sacred in your life? Because in our open, sometimes dark, melting world, we have to answer the question, what is sacred? And it is here where you open up and say against the darkling plain, like God did, you can say, Yahi, or let there be light. And that you can find Judaism's greatest gifts and a spiritual compass that can fill you up with meaning and purpose. And remember to follow the adage of that old rabbi, that if we really want change, if we really want to let the light in, if we really want to create something special and sacred in our lives, we have to begin with ourselves. Here's to another 7 wonderful years together. Shana Tova.